Hey, how's it going, everybody out there? Welcome to another episode of Zoobox Goes to the Movies. I'm your host, Sean. I just wanted to do a little quick disclaimer right up at the front. Originally, we were going to talk about Goldfinger specifically and use that as kind of a jumping off point for talking about James Bond as kind of a general franchise, our favorites, where it had been and where it's gone. And we don't actually end up talking about Goldfinger with enough specificity that I would label this a Goldfinger episode. We do bring it up, but I just didn't want there to be any confusion because pretty sure I introduced the show as being about Goldfinger, which it ends up not really being about. But it was awesome. Big thanks to Mark from Generation Y. Link in the description for his channel for stopping by. And yeah, on with the show. Hope you enjoy it. Hey, how's it going, universe? Welcome to another episode of Zoobox Goes to the Movies. I'm your host, Sean. Today, I have a very special guest, Mr. Mark, a.k.a. Maverick Buckley, if you've ever been around in the chat or seen in the comment section. So I guess, yeah, this is kind of awesome. It's really cool to actually just connect with Mark and be able to talk. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to talk to a British man, a man from the UK, about a movie, might as well make it their fucking hero, their man up on the hill there. We're going to be talking about 1964's Goldfinger.
Stop. Look. He's gunning for trouble. 007. It spells Bond.
Shocking.
He's the idol of every woman.
Who are you?
Bond. James Bond.
The envy of every man. The nemesis of the treacherous Mr. Goldfinger.
The film was directed by Guy Hamilton, written by Richard Malbum, Paul Den, and Ian Fleming, based on his novel of the same name. It stars Sean Connery, Gert Frobe, Honor Blackman, Shirley Easton, Tanya Mallet, Harold Sakata, Martin Benson, Bernard Lee, Cec Linder, Austin Willis, and others. The logline plot synopsis here on old IMDb is, while investigating a gold magnet smuggling, James Bond uncovers a plot to contaminate the Fort Knox Gold Reserve. There you go. How's it going, Mark?
Yeah, good, man. Good. I actually just watched it literally this morning because it's been a few years and there are quite a few James Bond films.
Yes.
And yeah, I'd forgotten how good some of them are and how good Goldfinger is.
Yeah, it's because I have a problem with James Bond movies where they all kind of bleed together. Like I can never differentiate the plots of any of them. Like I know them by the Bond girls. Like that's how I know which one is different. But in Gold,
I was just gonna say, I think it's because I know for a fact that I think one of them has been remade, but under different names, like 4 times. So that the joke is all James Bond movies are essentially the same plot. It's because in a lot of them, they are literally the same plot. There's 4 of them that were made.
It all goes back to Ian Fleming. It goes because they're written as like kind of these pulp, like I guess you'd call them the equivalent of airport books. That you would buy at like an airport when you're going on a flight because they're kind of short. They're pretty easy to read. And they're very similar. There's very much a structure. I have actually in my life I've read a few of the James Bond novels. And they are very like plug and play. They remind me of like reading I don't know if you guys are aware of this over there, like the Hardy Boys.
Yes, yeah.
Or Nancy Drew, like those kind of mystery novels where they have a very like specific kind of archetypes and structures and the way they tell their stories. And James Bond are kind of like that, you know,
Mm.
where you can plug and play. And I think that's why they all kind of bleed together, except for like maybe a few standouts. There's a few that like everybody kind of knows. And then depending on when you were born, you're going to be more familiar with some than others, right? Like my generation is Pierce Brosnan, so I'm very familiar with the Pierce Brosnan movies and the Daniel Craig ones, I suppose.
Yeah. So, well, why don't we go through the James Bonds from the beginning?
Yeah. Okay.
So, well, I'll let you. Let's see how many I can remember.
I think I got pretty good at James Bond recall. I'm going to try my best. There's Doctor
Okay.
No. There's Doctor No. That's the first one,
Yes.
which was actually not a big hit. It was a critical
Oh.
critical success, but it was not like an international success. And then there was From Russia with Love.
Okay.
And then there's Goldfinger, which is actually Goldfinger is the one that makes James Bond an international thing. Like it is the biggest movie at the time. It was like the highest grossing movie ever.
How many different actors had played James Bond by then? Was Sean Connery the first or second?
He's technically the second. There's actually like a Casino Royale movie that came out in the a couple years before Doctor No. That's not attached to it. And then there was because it's Peter Sellers,
Yeah.
and I think even Woody Allen has a cameo in it.
Wowzers.
Yeah.
57 or something. 1959, 1957.
Oh wait, no. I'm talking about two different. There's two Casino Royales. There's the spoof one with Peter Sellers.
You really do stock everything at Harrods, don't you?
Oh, I shouldn't pay too much attention to what you see going on here. It's all basic stuff.
Ah.
It'll be out of date by the January sales. Good morning, Johnson.
Which is I think
Yeah.
is like the early '60s. But then there is one that's
early
like
60s.
I think there's one that's like 1957
Okay.
that you're talking about, which I think it was a TV movie actually.
The game to be played tonight is for the highest stakes of all. A man is going to wager his life. Climax presents Casino Royale from the bestseller by Ian Fleming. Stars Barry Nelson, Peter Lorre, and Linda Christian. And now, Casino Royale.
Yeah, I always remember that one because they always play them at Christmas time here. I don't know if in the States they do as well.
Well, James Bond movies, they were always like on basic cable channels. They would always have marathons. That's why like so many people are actually have seen them, because like Saturdays would just be like the Bondathon on Spike
Nice.
TV, and they would just play Bond movies all day. So
Yeah.
like that's how I experienced a lot of them for the first time. Was definitely just kind of catching them on TV. So after Goldfinger, there is it Diamonds Are Forever?
Oh God, don't test me. I don't know.
I think it's Diamonds Are Forever, which is another Connery one. No, I'm wrong. It's Thunderball.
Thunderball, yeah, and then Moonraker.
No. See, there's a weird thing because there's always behind-the-scenes drama between Sean Connery and the producers, the Broccolis, and like making movies. So they were always like arguing about money. Like that's why
Oh.
Sean Connery had such disdain for James Bond for years. Like he wouldn't talk about it because he felt like he got ripped off.
Wow.
So because he did Goldfinger, which was like the biggest movie ever when it came out, and it was actually the thing that, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk about Goldfinger specifically, because it encapsulates where James Bond had been and then where he was going to go. Basically, the style of James Bond movies is developed in Goldfinger, like kind of being silly with gadgets and a little, a little more campy and a little bit more innuendo and fun. It was not hard ass super spy like the Ian Fleming novels. Like the Ian Fleming novels probably more resemble like the Daniel Craig take on the character, where he's like more of just a hard ass.
Yeah. Yeah, I always remember as well so Ian Fleming, obviously, for those that do not know, was the son of a very important, wealthy man. He actually went to the school a very upper class school here, probably the most upper class school, Eton, which is where Prince William and his knobhead brother went to school, and various prime ministers and whatnot. And so he was a very well-to-do guy. and I believe his family had properties around the world, and so he actually saw quite a lot of the world just in his teens.
Yeah.
And then obviously once he had made more money, because obviously he had a lot of family money anyway, he ended up building that place in was it in the the Bahamas or Jamaica?
It's the Bahamas, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he obviously had several huge mansions in the UK, and in Hong Kong he had a place. In Africa he had a place. So a lot of the places in the films are, from his direct experience, or vice versa. He built them after he did the film.
And did he serve in the military? Didn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Yeah, because people for years there was always like this legend, the mystique around Ian Fleming, like, oh, was he a spy? Because he would kind of, he had a self-awareness, so he would kind of seed that into the public, like, well, maybe I did do some of these things. You're like, okay, Ian.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the James Bond character is, especially in the novels. Have you ever read any of the books?
I haven't. No.
In the books, like I said, he's more like Daniel Craig's version, but he has like almost no personality. Like he is just like super spy macho archetype, like to the nth degree. Like he's like the Terminator. Like he's just an unstoppable force. Yeah. Just the smartest dude ever. He's like Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is written to be as smart as he is. Like sometimes with some of the Sherlock Holmes novels. So then after that, they did Thunderball. You Only Live Twice. Then after that is On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is the one-off Bond movie with George Lazenby, the Australian dude.
This never happened to the other fella.
Yeah.
Which,
do you know the story about that?
About how he got cast?
Yeah.
Didn't they see him at a beach and he was like at a party?
Yeah, it was something like he was partying with like, I don't know, one of the cast members or one of the crew from the previous one, and then they were like, oh yeah, they haven't actually approved the next James Bond yet, and so I think he rented out a tuxedo or something.
Yes.
And then he faked an appointment with one of the producers, and then he actually went to the secretary and he was like, oh, my name is blah blah blah. I don't know whether he gave his name or a fake name, and I'm here to see XYZ. And then as they actually didn't let him in, but he just kind of ran past them, like ran up the stairs, and he basically went in there, and yeah, the rest is history. Like he put on, obviously he's Australian, he tried to put on his best English accent. I guess for Americans there isn't a world of difference between Australian and English.
No, there's a pretty big difference between Australian.
Well, I think
accents.
that, but yeah. I didn't know it from
because he's widely criticized for that, like in terms of, at least that I'm aware of like not doing a great accent and actually not giving a great performance, which I never thought he was really any worse than anybody else. But
he wasn't even a real actor though, was he?
No, he was a model. Yeah, and he just wanted to get into acting, and basically, I think they end up kind of casting him as a fuck you to Sean Connery, because Sean Connery was like waiting for money, and they were just like, oh really, you want more money, Sean? You want like back end deals? Oh, we're just gonna get this guy we pulled off the fucking street. Like, go fuck yourself. We are James.
Yeah.
Like basically saying to Sean Connery, you're not James Bond. Like James Bond is bigger than Sean
James
Connery.
Bond.
Yeah. Like and then but because George Lazenby, it didn't really work out, but that was his choice. Like he decided not to come back and do a sequel. They didn't even really fire him. He just disappeared, and he went on like a bender for like a year.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get a hold of him. I guess he's a crazy Australian dude. Like he doesn't give a fuck. Like, and because I think I've seen that documentary. Like that's like the details like George Lazenby's like career and also his time as James Bond. And there's a lot of. He's a funny guy actually. He's actually a pretty funny dude in interviews and whatnot. But they got Sean Connery to come back because they were so like On Her Majesty's Secret Service did not do super well, and then they got Sean to come back, and that was when they did Diamonds Are Forever, which is I think if I'm not is that the first one with Blofeld maybe? That's one of these. And then and then after that Roger Moore comes on the scene and it starts with Live and Let Die, which is an excellent one. I actually rewatched it because every time I watch a James Bond movie, I end up watching like 4 or 5 of them. Because I just get in the mood to watch James Bond movies all of a sudden.
Yeah, I love that film, and with obviously Roger Moore, a lot of people used to say, I don't know if this is how people feel today, but Sean Connery was very similar. I mean, other than the sort of light Scottish accent, he was kind of as the book had intended, as much as any of them were in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And obviously you had Roger Moore, who was just, like you said, just really camp.
Yeah,
everything,
very light.
Yeah. But yeah, I must say, like, I remember most of the James Bond films that I can remember, and I can remember the bad guys and the different characters, are from the 70s and early 80s, which is the Roger Moore period.
Yeah, which it makes sense because he made the most of them. He made the most. I think didn't he do like 7 James Bond movies, or at least 6?
Yeah, 7, I think.
Yeah, I think he did do 7. Which I think Daniel Craig is coming. He's going to come in second. I think was it No Time to Die is the 6th one? No, it's the 5th one. 5th one.
Is it the 5th one?
Yeah, it's the 5th one, which is crazy. I'm like, wow, I've lived through like 2 whole James Bond cycles. Damn. Because I lived through Pierce Brosnan, which, I mean, I guess I was probably alive during Timothy Dalton, but obviously I had no awareness of that. And first, nobody liked Timothy Dalton for years, so I never saw the Timothy Dalton movies until probably like 5 or 6 years ago. But yeah, I've always liked Roger Moore. People bristle at it and they say it's like too much, but I have a lot of fun with the Roger Moore movies. And I like Roger Moore. Like,
yeah, he's a likable dude.
Yeah, he's very funny. He's self-effacing. It's like there's like a really like fun, erudite like pompousness to him that I just doesn't annoy me.
Yeah.
Like, you're just like, yeah.
Did you ever see him in the Cannonball movies?
Oh yes, of course. Yeah.
I felt like in the Cannonball movies that really like epitomized him as his role in James Bond.
And now, this. The sleep-in maid found it under your pillow this morning. What is the meaning of this?
The meaning, Mother dear, is a quick death. I warned you not to interfere in my affair.
Seymour, put that away. It's liable to go off.
I'm terribly sorry, Mother, but you know too much. You see, in my business, even the deepest family relationships aren't worth a farthing.
Farthing schmarthing. No.
Zykerzin, Mama.
And I get it that it was kind of supposed to, but I just feel like the way he portrays himself in the Cannibal movies is exactly how I think of him playing James Bond.
Yeah.
Like you said, he's pompous. He's overboard. He's almost trying to play. He almost plays that pompous Englishman to the point where he knows that it's going to make you laugh because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, it veers. He walks this very fine line between like believability and parody.
Yeah, and sometimes, yeah. Yes.
Maybe once you get to like Moonraker and stuff, it tips maybe in the parody direction a little bit. Yeah.
Yes.
Or when he's like, I think was it the Man with the Golden Gun? No, For Your Eyes Only, the one with Christopher Walken, who's the bad guy, and he's like at the koi pond, like karate chopping dudes.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was great.
What was the last Roger Moore one was Octopussy.
Another great one.
Another great one. I mean, most of the Roger Moore ones, I think maybe Moonraker is the one that maybe I would probably revisit the least because it's not as fun as you think it's going to be, considering they go to the fucking moon. Because James Bond movies have, and I think most of them have this problem, is like the middle of James Bond movies are very dense because it's all the plot is in the middle 45 minutes of the movie, and they just pack it all in there because there's like set pieces in the beginning, set pieces at the end, and they just pack all the exposition and all the plot building stuff in the middle of the movie, and it's like sometimes it's just not that interesting. It's like sometimes I just get kind of bored. Even though I was really tickled by by Goldfinger's like plot, how he's like gonna irradiate gold at Fort Knox so his gold is worth more money. It was the greatest. It's like such a great, funny, like silly, like little, almost like comic book, almost like that's
absurdity.
That's something like Lex Luthor would do in a Superman comic. Like, I'm gonna destroy all this real estate so my real estate is worth more money. Then after the Roger Moore era, Connery comes back for one more movie, but that's actually not part of the main James Bond franchise. Like if you buy the box set, like I have like the 50th anniversary, all the Blu-rays, it doesn't come with it because it's not part of the series. It's called Never Say Never Again.
Sean Connery is James Bond, Agent 007. Never say never again.
Which is a remake of Thunderball, one that he already made, and has Kim Basinger in it and stuff. And it's not very good, but he did it as a fuck you to the Broccolis.
Yeah.
He literally made that movie out of spite.
Isn't it so pathetic how we can be as humans sometimes? Like, they had this amazing thing, and through willy waving, as we would call it over here, everyone's trying to get one up on the other guy, and they're trying to get one over on the producers, and the star's trying to get one over the director. The director's trying to get one. It's like, dudes, just chill out, make some good shit.
Well, I think it's like, it's technically like the first like major franchise. Like franchises were not a thing when James Bond starts, right? Like it's the first thing that
international,
was and that was like a series. Like that was a series. Like there was, we didn't really have that, not to that extent, right?
Well, in the UK we had the Carry On comedies. Have you seen those? Yeah, but like worldwide, I reckon that is probably the first one.
But even though, like something like the Carry On thing, that's very like you said, it's like specific to the UK. That's more of a UK thing, and it's like and it's a niche thing, and it obviously
very niche.
It's not like generating the kind of money that like something like James Bond is. So Sean Connery is probably like, well, I am just as important to this as anything, and to a certain extent, he's not wrong, right? Like Sean Connery's he became iconic. Like he is the character for a lot of people, right? And when you removed him, that's weird. That's probably why George Lazenby got such a backlash to him, because he was the first one that wasn't Connery.
I agree.
And people like just rejected that shit. They're like, no, because it wasn't normal to have a new James Bond every couple of years.
Well, if you think about it, with the Bourne trilogy, which is obviously America's version, America's had 1,000 sorts, but a lot of people compared the Bourne trilogy or whatever to that, and then I think I'm right in saying, my memory is terrible, but you obviously had Matt Damon, and then
Jeremy Renner,
and everyone was like, I remember at the time people were like, this is gonna suck balls, man, and it was okay.
It's okay. Like it's okay. It's actually just like a mediocre movie. It's really not even Jeremy Renner's fault particularly. And then a couple years later, they're like, "Come on, Matt Damon, let's make another one. Let's come back." And then we're just gonna call it Jason Bourne because that's what we do now.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the other parallel we have in the States, which is also an international franchise, is Mission Impossible.
Simple game. Is he serious?
Always.
It's much worse than you think.
That's kind of the closest thing we have to an American Bond. Like he is kind of the closest thing that we have to that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're looking at series, of course there is the classic Fast and Furious.
Oh yeah. Which I guess there's probably parallels. There's probably parallels to like the way in which Fast and Furious has become more and more ludicrous over the years, in the same way that James Bond kind of did for a while, like through the Roger Moore era.
And quite campy, and quite over the top. And,
they're just superheroes now. They're just superhero movies now. Yeah.
I'm not going to get distracted. I won't talk about Jason Statham.
Oh, you can think about. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I find it funny that Jason apparently is a very nice dude, but he's not the biggest dude. He's not the biggest man in the world.
No.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We all come in different shapes and sizes. But it's quite difficult, like when you see The Rock, who's like 6'5" and 320 pounds of steroid, allegedly, and then Jason Statham comes in at like 5'9" and 150 pounds, and they're supposed to be having like a legit fist fight over a car or something, and you're like, Ah.
Especially because the way they choreograph those things, it's just a fist fight. It's not like
Yeah.
Jason Statham is a martial artist. Like, let him be a martial artist and let him that be the reason why he can fight The Rock.
Yeah.
But no, they don't do that. They're like literally
Power.
toe to toe, just fucking hitting each other.
Power. Yeah. Just throwing people through windows and yeah.
I can't do the Fast and Furious movies. I have not seen the newest one yet,
I have
But
not either.
and I haven't seen Hobbs and Shaw. I don't think I've actually watched that whole movie. I've seen parts of it, but
Yeah, I know quite a lot of people can be a bit snooty about films. I would say Hobbs and Shaw is fine if you're bored and it's just like a popcorn.
yeah, of course.
Especially if you have kids. Like that's a great film if you just want to sit down with your kid and watch a kind of mind-numbing film. It's not a terrible film.
No,
is what I would say.
they're very like
Production value's high.
they harken back to kind of like 90s action movies, and that's what
They
I
do.
grew up. That's what I grew up watching with my dad. Like I would that's what we would watch, all the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies,
Yeah.
all the Stallone movies. Like that was like an event at our house. Like
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
shit, the
same.
new. I remember my dad taking me to the movie theater to go see End of Days, and I was like over the moon. I was like 13 years old. I was like, yes,
Yeah.
new Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I'm going to see it with my dad. This is awesome. There's some boobs in here. This was great.
And they're not Arnold's.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is a great time. I feel exactly the same. Yeah, that's a good sort of analogy or whatever that is, simile.
Yeah, but they're just. I think that there's a level of bombast that is I have a hard time getting behind, because back in the 90s, at least all of it was like kind of practical.
Yes.
If there was car chases, they were like kind of like real car chases, and there was real explosions and real action, and
Yeah.
you really kind of bought into like your heroic characters. Even like go watch like the early Michael Bay movies. I mean, go like The Rock.
Yeah.
The Rock is incredible.
The Rock is my favorite film.
Welcome to The Rock.
Yeah, it's so good.
The Rock and Con Air are two films you
Don't treat women like
have to watch back to back always, and they are both incredible. But what you're saying, I completely agree with. Especially in the 90s, we had, you obviously had O.J. Simpson's style car chases fairly regularly, and if you were in California, and I was in San Diego, you definitely had that stuff.
Yeah.
Especially in the LA County area. And so you could kind of relate to that because you would occasionally see it on the local news that stuff actually happened. But then obviously in some of the Fast and Furious stuff, when they just happen to be driving modified Japanese cars in the Arctic Circle, and then like a nuclear submarine breaks through the Arctic, you're like, hold on. I'm not sure that you taking me seriously.
Well, it's
So,
like,
yeah.
it actually, to even go back to James Bond for a second. Remember, did you ever see Die Another Day, the last Brosnan one?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so the Fast and Furious movies are like that movie.
They are. Oh my god, yeah.
I mean, like, he's actually in his Aston Martin driving on, like, a
Ice.
frozen bed, ice,
yeah,
and, like,
with missiles coming out the
missiles
front.
coming out, and all this craziness, and all the silly, campy shit. Like, that is
Yes.
basically what Fast and Furious turned into. And
It
because
is.
they are, like, international spy type people. You're like, the movies.
They are now.
Dude, that
They are
franchise
now.
started with them, like, boosting VCRs. Like,
I know. Yeah, I think everyone's got a bit confused by now. Are we still just petty thieves, or are we like international men of mystery? Am I still shagging your sister, or are we just? Yeah, I'm not really sure where we are. But it's
like,
fun.
yeah, but like, as like big populist filmmaking goes, I would take the Fast and Furious movies over like most of the Marvel movies that come out. I just find the Marvel movies very boring.
They are now. Yeah, the
Yeah.
last few years it's just gotten to the point where, and especially the recent thing about Spider-Man, where they're going to reverse time. They're getting Doctor Strange.
They're doing like multiverse stuff, so there's going to be different universes.
Well, that's just cheating to me. That's just, in
Well,
my opinion.
It is very comic booky, right? Like that is something that would happen in the comic. The multiverse has appeared, and there's fractured time, and there's different Spider-Men from different timelines. That is, I will say, that is very comic booky. But I agree with you that it's a cheat, because there's all we do nowadays in culture and popular culture is nostalgia mine, and this is a way to get Tobey Maguire to be Spider-Man again, and that's a guaranteed money. That's guaranteed money. There's every person my age will go buy, and I don't fucking watch Marvel movies anymore, but I will, goddamn it, I'm going to go see Tobey Maguire be Spider-Man again.
Yeah,
And then
I agree.
And then Sam Raimi, who directed the original trilogy, or the early 2000 Spider-Man movies, he's working with Marvel now. So I'm like, God damn it! Now I have to watch a Marvel movie because I like Sam Raimi.
I know. What are those lyrics? Something like, "Just as I'm leaving, you suck me back in," or something. And
Yeah.
that's exactly how I feel now. Like I was just happy to never look at anything to do with Marvel.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Oh yeah, we're getting Tobey Maguire."
Like I saw it through Endgame. I was like, okay, Endgame is a good stopping point for me. Like I don't need to watch these anymore, or feel even like I even care to be part of the cultural conversation that is provided by watching them. And but Tobey Maguire, I am like, pathetic nostalgia. Like, yeah, you got me. Like I'm doing it.
Yeah, I really like Tobey Maguire though. I know a lot of people did not like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Yeah, which is insane to me.
To me too. I feel the same thing. I'm like, are we watching the same Spider-Man? Like the English kid that plays the Spider-Man.
Andrew Garfield. Yeah.
Well, there's another English kid that plays the new Spider-Man.
Oh, the new one, Tom Holland. Is that his name?
Yeah, Tom Holland. Okay, so all the English ones are not, in my opinion, a patch on Tobey Maguire. I just think Tobey was the most perfect. He just has that most perfect thing of like being believable as a strongman and being believable as a nerd. To me, Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield are both believable as nerds, but I'm not. I just don't believe that Tom Holland. I just don't. I can't. I'm sorry. For whatever reason.
I think a lot of that is probably Sam Raimi's direction as well. Like, there's a wholesomeness to that era of superhero movies in general, but those Spider-Man movies in particular. Because Sam Raimi, he's an older guy. He's like hearkening back to the 60s and 70s Spider-Man, which was just more overtly wholesome. Yeah. And Tobey Maguire encapsulates that. Exactly. I think you put it perfectly. Like, you believe that he's kind of an over his head nerdy guy, but you also think that he's capable. Like, you buy it,
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how much you know about Ian Fleming, but I was thinking we could just talk a bit more about his life. Obviously, was the most crazy life. Obviously, for any of you guys out there watching that saw Skyfall, that house is. I'm not sure if that's the exact house, but there is a very, very similar house to that up in Scotland that was their family estate.
Oh, okay.
Which I can't even imagine.
Which in Skyfall, I think they imply that it is that because they're up in Scotland. So
yes, and so I mean, obviously, Ian Fleming himself and his family were English. I mean, British is obviously the island made up of 3.5, I guess, countries. But yeah, and they had this place in Scotland. It was a beautiful place, very similar to the one in Skyfall. He obviously he liked his drinking, he liked his substances, he liked hanging around with famous people. He was very quintessentially English, he liked his cricket and all this sort of stuff, which is so crazy when you think of somebody like doing amphetamines whilst drinking Jim Beam and they're watching the cricket. But then obviously he had affairs by the gallon. He was very fascinated with New York culture. He actually modeled James Bond, which we might get onto the looks of the next James Bond. He modeled James Bond. I completely forget. Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name. But it was basically like a guy off Broadway from like the late 1940s. Mm-hmm. And he did look very similar to Sean Connery, I would say, is the most similar look. And then obviously his son, Ian Fleming's son, oh God, what was his name? I can't remember. But he sent him to school, and he kind of suffered from a very similar thing. I think Ian died 4 years. Ian died, and then 4 years later, his son died.
Oh wow!
So yeah, so I actually think there was a big hullabaloo in the papers because he was actually dealing guns at his school, Eton. Yeah. So the police burst into his room and there was 19 different weapons. He was like, "Oh, this one's great, guys. Have you ever seen this one before?"
What the hell is going on there? God.
Yeah. So he was selling drugs and guns. Ian Fleming's son was.
Well, that's crazy.
I know.
That's great. So his dad's this kind of socialite.
Yes.
Almost like a pariah, probably to some degree. Yeah. Not to be disrespectful to Mr. Fleming, but and then his son is at fucking school selling guns and drugs.
Yeah.
Wow.
I believe his son, suffered from depression, which is an evil, devilish thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, the drugs helped his depression. But obviously, when you're the son of Ian Fleming, and not just the fact that your dad did Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and obviously James Bond, and some other great things as well. But you also have that family thing, which is kind of not just a British thing. I mean, there's many places in the world where you don't want to let the family name down.
Of course not, yeah.
And so, his son probably felt a lot of weight on his shoulders, and just that combination of all of that pressure, and he ended up taking his own life by taking a bunch of pills, and he left a suicide note in around 1971. I think his dad died in the late 60s, and he died in the early 70s.
His dad died in 1964. He was only
64.
He was only 56. Wow.
That's right. Yeah.
Lived fast.
Very fast, and died pretty young. So I always think it's something to think when you watch these movies. James Bond is obviously what Ian Fleming wanted to be.
Yeah.
But if you take the fact that Ian Fleming was not in MI6, they actually weren't that dissimilar. Booze, drugs, women.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's the idealized version of himself, like you said. Like this is like what he would like to project an image to the world.
Yeah.
Is to be like a guy like him, but that is perfect and capable.
Yes, and has an excuse for all the womanizing and drink. I'm saving Britain, the British Empire. I'm saving the world, the Western world. This is why I need to sleep with this woman in this projectile coming out of a sea base. Yeah,
that's why I shack up with all these birds.
Yeah, exactly.
They call them birds.
He would. Yeah, yeah, lovely birds, gorgeous bird,
gorgeous birds.
So yeah, and I think it's a very sad story. I would have loved to have known. I would have loved to have seen what he would have done if he hadn't died, because 56 back then, they were like, well, I've lived my life, I've had my kids, I've done my work, good night. But now we would be like, no, keep writing, keep putting out stuff. We want more. So
yeah, it is weird. Like the perception of age and accomplishment is because now we just have naturally just have longer lifespans. So people, like an actor died just the other day. Was it Michael K. Williams? He's an actor from The Wire, right? He was like 56, and we look at it as a tragedy. We say, "Oh my God, like 56-year-old guy died."
Yeah.
And Ian Fleming, but back then, because he was 56, but he looked like he was 70. Like
he
people,
did.
like life was just 50, 60 years ago was just so much harsher on people, right?
I think people don't remember that today.
Yeah, because if you go, like, I always see funny things on Twitter where they'll show, like, old actors from, like, the 70s and stuff, and they'll be like, he was only 37 here, and he looks like a 55-year-old guy. Like, if you go, like, look at old pictures of, like, an actor like James Coburn, like, when he was, like, 35, he looked like he was 50. Like, he was just perpetually looked like a 50-year-old man. Or even somebody like John Wayne. Like, by the time,
just thinking of John Wayne.
Yeah, John Wayne, like, he wasn't that old when he died.
He looked 50 his entire life.
Up until like the last decade, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like you say, it was a tough life, and as we said before, he served in the Second World War, and he had some injuries from the Second World War. But I also think that we can make excuses and say that being in a war is tough on you, and of course it is. But I'm sure what was most tough on him was the whiskey.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, he was a functioning alcoholic. I think I have a sense memory because I have looked up in like Ian Fleming in the past that the last couple of years were not great. He was I think he was kind of a shit show. Like he was just in the Bahamas in his like little bungalow that he built and just hanging out, and just being drunk all the time. Yeah.
And what was it called? The bungalow Goldeneye. Was it Goldeneye? Goldeneye.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. So yeah, it's all linked, all those different properties and stuff. But yeah, so great movie. Are you excited about the next one?
I am. I am a fan of the Daniel Craig movies. I think I don't think they've ever done better with Daniel Craig than Casino Royale. I think that was like the quintessential modern Bond movie. Which kind of, because it goes through like a period of time. So like after Roger Moore, there's Timothy Dalton, which was a response to how silly the Roger Moore ones got, because they basically tried to do a Daniel Craig, where they were like, we're going to do a hard reboot. He's younger, he's tougher, he's meaner, like
he's dynamic.
He's And I've come to appreciate the Timothy Dalton movies more than I did as a kid growing up. You know.
Yes. Well, I actually think it helps that they were good movies.
Yeah, they're
in my
solid.
opinion.
Yeah.
And he was he was good enough. Like he was good enough. I think as you were implying, he did get a bad rap because everybody wasn't used to it. Everybody loved Roger Moore. The producers, as you were saying, like they wanted to do a new thing for the younger audience. Because the thing with Bond is it's like Formula One. Like, so Formula One racing has always, a little bit like tennis, has always been known as a kind of a sort of older people's pastime.
Yeah.
And so, with Formula One, they're always trying to think, well, how can we get young people into this sport where you need £350 million a year to take part? It's not like football where you turn up with a football and you can play. And so they're always coming up with different ways. And it was the same with Bond. They were like, well, what can we do to get 17-year-olds really loving Bond? And their way of doing it was obviously, as you said, to make it more cutting edge, more dynamic, more, none of these sort of cute taglines.
Well, because it's also like it was a response to the environment as well. The world had kind of changed. So, if you watch the Dalton ones, it's about Middle East terrorism, and stuff like that. So that was the kind of, because that's like Osama bin Laden and the Taliban, like all that kind of stuff is being created from the late 70s to the mid 80s, and they were kind of dealing with some of those more kind of larger geopolitical realities to try to ground it more, like you said, like, and bring it back. And to be like, oh, this is serious business. Like, James Bond is serious. Like, he's not a silly guy. We are not going to the moon, goddammit. Like,
rather than irradiating the Fort Knox gold.
And like, and also there was some other like very popular movies at the time that were a little bit more hard-edged, hard-nosed. Like that's, The Road Warrior came out, which was like a big international success, which is obviously not a direct parallel, but like the grittiness of it, like the seriousness of it was like kind of something you saw in a lot of movies of that time period. And but I agree with you that I don't think that the audience was prepared because they were so. Roger Moore was James Bond for like 12 years.
Yeah, that's a long time.
And he did 6 or 7 movies. So it's just that for most people, that was who James Bond was.
Yeah.
Of that era, it was Sean Connery or Roger Moore. George Lazenby, nobody ever talked about George Lazenby.
No. Yeah, like it's funny that I've probably talked to you more about George Lazenby than I've ever thought about him in my life.
Well, I had a buddy in high school that for some reason, I don't know if it was like a natural contrarian thing, he's like, no, George Lazenby is the best one. On Her Majesty's Secret Service is the best one. And the only reason I ended up watching it is because I used to have a huge crush on Diana Rigg.
Oh yeah.
Because I found the Avengers at the library, and so I just fell in love with Diana Rigg for some reason, and she's James Bond's one and only wife. The only time he's ever been married is on Her Majesty's Service, but he's got fans. There's like a very little niche group of people.
He does. Yeah.
They're probably on one forum on the entire internet where they come together and be like, Lazenby rules, dude.
Yeah. Well, I did actually read a newspaper. I was just thinking after I said I've thought about him more now than I ever have before. That's actually a lie, because I remember reading something about him where they were saying, obviously you're a very controversial topic, and they were asking him what was his life before, how he became James Bond, how the fans are with him. And, he was saying, like, it's great. He was like, I get a royalty check once in a while. People, for some reason, still recognize me, and they still talk to me. And, I'm living in the nice part of Australia. And, so it was all good. But what you were saying about his only wife, that's the one thing I loved about James Bond was it's such an English... No, not English. It's just such a man thing to do, to be like, the reason for my serial womanizing is because my wife died.
Yeah. He's like, I just knew I would never find somebody like that again.
Yeah. That's
Well,
why I have to do one night stands.
You know, I have no choice.
Yeah, my hands have been forced. I'm sorry.
I'll say, like, in the modern context, the more modern movies, like the constant womanizing and hooking up, is kind of counter to like the modern James Bond. So there's almost like a dissonance. There's like a dissonance in the Craig movies because like the Pierce Brosnan era. Well, I guess it starts with Dalton, but there's definitely more of a feminist hue to the girls, and it starts with Brosnan. But they have this thing where they have their cake and eat it too, because they're like, well, they're strong women and stuff, but James Bond is gonna fuck all of them. Like,
I'm glad you say that though, because I was thinking this morning. I mean, what you're saying is definitely broadly true, but I actually think that James Bond was very progressive. Now, hear me out.
He was. No, he was.
Yeah, because if you go right back to the early 60s, so we're talking like way before the Summer of Love, a year or two before what they call it the English invasion of the Beatles and stuff like that, you had movies with James Bond where women were, not as much as they are now, but they were still very strong figures. So in GoldenEye, Honor Blackman, she's the one flying the private jet. She's the one holding James Bond, kidnapping James Bond.
Well, not only, she has a whole fleet of women.
Yeah, and in that film where they go and they spray that radiation, or they spray whatever they spray over Fort Knox, those stunt pilots, the actual girls, the characters, are female characters. You know, when they spray Fort Knox? And that's the same in almost every film, like Octopussy. Who is the bad guy? Octopussy. She is a bad mamma jamma. Not just that. How many films did we see in the 70s, the 60s and 70s, where an English person, but let's just say like an English, I was thinking like an English secret agent, but just let's just say an English person, is shacking up with a black woman who is also a badass.
Yeah.
Like, this stuff was the right type of progressive.
No, I agree, because it
it
allowed women to play interesting characters. Like, not every Bond girl is just somebody he hooks up with at a party, right? Like, most of them have even the ones he does just have one night stands with tend to have definition. They have motivation.
Yeah, there's a reason.
They're not just what would you call? They're not just there. Yeah, they're not there just for spectacle or for sexual objectification. I mean, granted, that's part of it.
But he could be part of that as well, can't he?
Yes, of course he can. Yeah. And he is a lot of the times. I mean, the thing with James Bond, if you watch the old ones, like, he is always the aggressor. He always, if you watch, like, Goldfinger, just specifically, Pussy Galore, he's, like, holding her down in the hay and forcing himself on her until she just gives in. Like, that's, I guess, maybe more what I mean about, like, having your cake and eat it too.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yeah, that's true. But you know what they say? If they eventually give in, that means they wanted you in the first place.
Well, that's what I say, right?
Yeah, that's how we're raised here.
Well, because there's always the sexual dynamics between men and women, or women are always I guess archetypally like the more chaste, and they like to be chased after. They like to be coveted, and that is part of that is like the game, the dance is convincing them to sleep with you. Like, that's part of the game that men and women play.
Listen, we chuckle, but that's true.
It is It is true.
We can pretend it's not, but it is.
Yeah, and it's and maybe I'm old-fashioned, but like my experience receiving it on the other direction, it was always like unappealing to me. I didn't like girls, like, because I went through a period of my life where I had girls were very aggressive, very and I guess it's just our generation as well. Always like coming over, like, why is it okay for you to come over and grab my dick at the bar? Like, yeah.
Like, so you didn't like that?
I mean, well, okay, I'm not gonna say I hated it. I would not say I hated it because it makes it easier. You're just like, okay, well, I know what the deal is now. Like, no work involved. But after that happens like a bunch of times, it becomes less appealing. And I started to understand. I kind of appreciated where women were coming from a lot more when I felt myself becoming the objectified. I was like, because I was like in a band and I would wear like silly clothes and tight pants. I used to be in really good shape and like, and I became objectified by like girls that would see you and they just think they don't treat you like you're a person. They treat you like a character.
I can't believe you're saying this. So you were treated like a piece of meat.
Like a piece of meat.
Those horrible women
I know. I can't. Can you believe they did this to me? But it gave me a little perspective. It gave me a little perspective, and I was like, okay,
this is what it's like.
I get it a little bit now. Like, I will chill out.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, like, joking aside, there's truth in both sides. I
Yes,
guess,
of course.
like, as is most always the case. But yeah, so I would definitely say that James Bond was super progressive for its day.
Yeah, that would be shocking. That would have been shocking for people at the time to see some of that stuff,
Yeah.
especially in the Roger Moore era, like you said. Like, having black women in prominent roles, sleeping with James Bond. Like, that's a big deal. Culturally, that's a big deal.
Oh, it's a huge deal. And also, like, and people can be all kind of, like, fluffy about it and pretend that this isn't true, what I'm about to say, but it is true. There is definitely a difference between sleeping with a light-skinned black girl with long, straight hair.
Mm-hmm.
There is a difference to the general public in 1960s England, France, Germany, America, than sleeping with...
Don't turn your back on me anymore.
I can't look at you. No, hold on, just a minute. Just
Move your chair back a bit or something.
with Grace Jones.
Yes.
A 6 foot tall, pitch black
Yes.
woman
Yeah.
from London with a high top, with a flat top.
Yes.
There is definitely a difference between that and sleeping with, a caramel skinned coloured long hair a girl. So it must have been shocking, and that's kind of cool. Like, I remember as a kid back in the early 90s, watching a VHS of Roger Moore, sleeping with the second black woman, and I was like, God damn, that's kind of cool.
We could look at it through a modern, postmodern, progressive lens and be like, well, that's just him being a colonizer. He's a colonizer, dude.
Yeah.
White supremacist. See, this was to assuage white people to think that they were doing something good,
Yeah, he's just a fetishist. It's just a fetishist.
He's a fetishist.
Abusing her. That 6'2" black lady was obviously being abused.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could look at it through that lens, but we could also just not
No,
be.
I don't. No, I like to put things in context of history where they came from and accept it.
I agree. I think if people can't see that was a good thing, then there's something wrong with them.
Yeah. So let me ask you. Okay, so we haven't really. This is the one Bond guy we haven't talked a lot about. What do you think of Pierce Brosnan?
I think he was the perfect James Bond at that time.
For the 90s?
Absolutely. I don't think you could have picked anybody. I don't think you could have picked anyone better to play James Bond. Yeah, in the 90s. I think he was... Go on.
Oh, I was going to say, he was actually supposed to be James Bond when Dalton took over. And he was contractually obligated. He was on a TV show.
Okay.
What's it called? It's just like James Bond. It's like a James Bond knockoff show.
I can't really think of any off the top of my head.
Literally, all the promotion is like him in a tuxedo.
Oh, okay.
And he's like a secret agent.
Superior. A decidedly masculine superior. Suddenly there were cases around the block. It was working like a charm. Until the day he walked in, with his blue eyes and mysterious past. And before I knew it, he assumed Remington Steele's identity. Now I do the work, and he takes the bows. So I was just kind of curious how you felt about him as Bond, because a lot of people don't like Brosnan, but I always liked him because I thought he split the difference between Connery and Moore.
He did. That's such a good way of putting it. Yeah, I think he was a good-looking dude. I mean, he was devastatingly handsome.
Yes. Yeah.
He had just the right type of English accent to not come across as a snooty twat, but also sound as he probably would have sounded back then. Because obviously still during the 90s, I suppose it doesn't matter really, does it? But I just think that like his look, his voice, and just the way that they wrote James Bond at that time, like the sort of semi-seriousness, but he also had that playfulness, in his toolbox.
Filthy habit.
To be able to get away with, the occasional cheeky line or that occasional, I can't remember what the word is for it, but when somebody dies by someone throws a toaster in there, and you know they're like, oh, it looks toasty in there. or
Yeah, oh
something.
yeah. Oh my,
You know?
one of my favorite all-time James Bond lines, one-liner, is Pierce Brosnan. It's when he kills Xenia Onatopp.
Always did enjoy a good squeeze.
Oh yeah. Oh my god, I remember that. Yeah.
Or when he knocks the dude out who's smoking a cigarette. I think it was Tomorrow Never Dies. He's like, filthy habit. Just like those fun, like kind of nod to the audience, can't like winking at you a little bit stuff, and he could balance it.
Yeah, definitely he could. So yeah, I think similar. excuse me. Similar like Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. I would say that this is how I view Pierce Brosnan. He was like the perfect person to be able to have the cheekiness, but still think that he could probably kick your ass. I know nowadays everyone likes to think that, oh, just put him in a toe hold and blah, blah, blah. I don't really care. Like, he was the perfect guy in that character to be cheeky and to think that he could save the world.
Well, I like that the James Bonds, up until Daniel Craig, were kind of like had the physicality of what you would like a normal person. They weren't like ripped studs. Like they weren't. They were just and I always like for some, maybe the older I get, the more I appreciate that. I'm like, yeah, us regular guys, we can do things too,
Yeah, and that's exactly what I thought when I was watching Goldeneye, fucking hell, everything's gold in them. Goldfinger was when he's sleeping with the first girl who ends up, spoiler, painted in gold. He's 6'2", so he's tall, but he's not buff. So he's got, like I have, he's got a little bit of a bit of flab on the arm. Mm-hmm. Like when he's leaning across her, you're not looking at a bowling ball and then another bowling ball. You're kind of looking at a bit of a skinny arm with some flab hanging off. And I was thinking, how cool is that? Like he's just a normal dude. And then obviously with Daniel Craig, we obviously, with the first one, we had to have him doing, the very progressive thing of swapping roles with the lady who I can't remember now from the 60s, and walking out of the sea with his piercing blue eyes and his blonde hair and his rippling 16-pack, and his massive mammaries. And I agree with you. Like, I feel like I've known some people, not in it doesn't matter, but there are a lot of people at the very top of things like that are not ridiculously big and ripped. Like, for example, in the SAS, and I know the SAS is not the be-all and end-all of special forces. I know it's not MI6, but most of the people are average type dudes. They're just very conditioned.
Yes.
But they're not 6'5" with like massive.
Yeah, because the people that really go out and do this stuff are not people that are like just sitting around in gyms all day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like maybe if you get into like the elite of the elite, like special forces people, like if you were to go like a SEAL team or something like that, like our equivalent, those guys actually literally spend all their day in gym just waiting, being told to go somewhere.
Yeah, especially if
there's an impracticality to being in that kind of shape when you have to do those kind of things out in the field. Like that's not.
Yes.
You can't sustain that. That's not maintainable. Like.
No, because you want to be more. You also want to be like inconspicuous. And
yes.
If you are absolutely ripped and speaking in like a strong Texan accent in the middle of Afghanistan, people are going to be like, "Oh, I wonder which one the SEAL is."
Well, that's what's kind of exactly. But that's what's kind of interesting about like the Daniel Craig era. Like he more than any of them sticks out like a sore thumb no matter where he goes. Like everybody else, like every James Bond is handsome, like classically handsome. Well, I think Daniel Craig might be the least handsome of them, actually.
Yeah, he looks like Shrek, doesn't he?
My wife and I were.
Curse you for making me watch that bloody Shrek thing, whereas love is Shrek.
God, Shrek is life.
I push against his force. I want to please Shrek. He roars a mighty roar as he fills my butt with his love. My dad walks in. Shrek looks him straight in the eye and says, It's all ogre now. Shrek leaves through my window. Shrek is love. Shrek is life.
I can't believe you made me watch that. Oh,
Shrek is love. Shrek is
oh
life.
stop. Oh, no, I've got the green headphones and everything.
But yeah, like it's my wife and I were watching Skyfall last night actually, and I was just
film.
like, and I was kind of like, I took a little Delta 8. I was like just settling in for the night, trying to like so I could fall asleep after the movie. And for some reason, in my slightly stoned state, I was like, man, I don't like that face, dude. Like, I was like, it looks like somebody, like his face was made of clay, and somebody just went like this and squished it in a little bit.
Yeah, he's certainly not what I would call traditionally handsome, and he's definitely not a pretty boy. Actually, he did a great film. Sorry, go on.
No, sorry, go for it.
I was just going to say he did a great film about drug dealing. Was it Something Factory or something?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. About drug?
Yeah, I think he was growing a lot of marijuana, supplying it to gangs. The cover, someone will be shouting at the screen what it is. The cover is white with like a little yellow sign on it, and he would have done it in about 2000, maybe 98.
Let me see if I can find it here.
Okay, and so, in that film, he actually did kind of look traditionally good looking, but
yeah, he's a younger guy.
Yeah, but then as he's aged, as he kind of got into his late 30s and his 40s, he's become much more sort of gruff looking. And a lot of people do say he looks like Shrek, and he says he looks like Shrek, so that's cool because he obviously doesn't have too much of an ego.
And because he doesn't give a shit. He's James Bond, dude. Like
exactly. Who cares?
I find Daniel Craig very endearing when I listen to interviews because he seems kind of like a pompous prick, but he's also very down to earth.
I think he's down to earth.
Yeah, because he was doing the press tour for Spectre, and of course everybody's like, well, when's the next one coming out? And he's just like, if you ask me that question right now, he's like, I would rather go slit my wrists than make another fucking James Bond movie.
In a super candid interview with Time Out while doing press for Spectre, Daniel Craig is asked if he'd want to do another Bond movie. His answer, now I'd rather break this glass and slash my wrists. Bold comments from Daniel Craig, people. Craig also said if he did do another Bond film, quote, it would only be for the money.
Yeah, he does seem, everything I've seen him in, he seems to be like a really nice guy. I think for Americans, and I do understand this, like some English people with, like a middle England accent, especially if they're wealthy and good, and successful, can just come across as being like a pompous prick. And I understand that, but like I honestly don't think he is. Like he's always seemed really chilled when I've seen him.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. He's very down to earth. Like, so, like, I guess there is that interesting juxtaposition of like the kind of the posh presentation, maybe from where he's from or who his family was. But like when he actually like is able to articulate himself, he seems like a very like practical person in a weird way.
Yes.
And most of my experience with like Daniel Craig as like an actor doing interviews has always surrounded James Bond. It was always him doing press for James Bond or talking about James Bond or whatever, which I feel like he's almost becoming like Connery-esque where he's starting to resent it like mildly.
Yeah, I think he is too, because I think people want him to, well, I don't actually know the truth about why he's stopping. I don't know if you do, but whether he's just got to the age where he's like, I'm done. But I know a lot of people just want him to carry on, a bit like how they did with Sean Connery.
Yeah, well, I mean, they usually don't. It's probably different now because now they're all like producers on these movies and stuff as well as being actors. But like even like Pierce Brosnan, up until Daniel Craig being announced, thought he was doing another one.
Right. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because Pierce Brosnan has in years past has been like, I really hate that I went out on Die Another Day.
Yeah. Oh.
He really is bummed about that. Like somebody the other day he's in some movie, I think the new Cinderella movie or something, and he was being interviewed, and they're like, "Hey, everybody's all this nostalgia's out there. Would you accept it if they came back and they wanted to do like a one-off, like old man James Bond?" And he was like, "Fuck yeah!"
Oh,
and I was
that's
like,
sweet.
And I was looking at him, I was like, I would kill to see that because he kind of is my James Bond, like because I was When
Yeah.
GoldenEye came out, I was like 9.
GoldenEye. Sorry.
It was 1995. I saw it in a drive-in with my dad. Like,
Oh,
you know,
wow. Oh,
yeah.
we never had drivers. I'm so jealous.
I know that sucks.
It does.
We
And no
have a
AC.
few left around here, but
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess, now we're in that. Well, America is just so massive that there should never be a lack of drive-through space. But in the UK, we're so overcrowded now. I think we're like the second most crowded place that has a bigger population than 1 million on Earth.
Yeah.
And if you had like an acre of land, it would be worth a fortune. So no one's gonna just run a. But it's sad because I love the idea of it. That film, by the way, is called Layer Cake.
Oh, Layer Cake, Matthew Vaughn, yeah.
Yeah, and I would recommend that to everybody. It is an amazing film. It's actually very realistic. I don't know if they based it on a true story. Oh, sorry, that was my phone. But yeah, it's a great film. And the other film where he's, what I would say, kind of traditionally better looking. He's always looked a bit Shrekky, but is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people don't like that one. I actually kind of enjoyed that one. I'm a big David Fincher fan.
Oh, okay.
So I like David Fincher, well, for the most part. But yeah, I enjoyed that one. I liked him in it too as well. But yeah, like Brosnan has always been. He's just kind of my archetypal James Bond in my mind's eye. So I've always had kind of an affinity for him over the other ones, honestly, except for maybe
Irishman.
Sean Connery. Yeah, the Irishman. Yeah.
You had to pick
I can't
the
help
one
it.
Irishman.
Well, I think it's also like I hit puberty young, so I had hair on my chest, and I was like, "Oh, nice, a guy out there sporting some chest hair in this climate."
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like, "Thank God!" Like at least now maybe people will like leave me alone. Like James Bond's got chest hair.
I bet you've got chest hair like a Norwegian forest, haven't you?
Oh, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, damn.
I would say it's very It's Brosnan-esque. That's
Yeah?
it's like a carpet. It's like a carpet. You know?
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I also think I think the best. I'm very envious. Like I wish I could grow a beard that thick as well. By the way, I think that GoldenEye was a very poignant moment for all of us as well because the greatest video game ever created was created in the name of that movie. And it had us for, I would say, 4 years playing multiplayer. More. Yeah. I was going to say more, but I thought I'd look like a video game junkie. But okay, 16 years just playing multiplayer.
I would play that today if somebody
I would play it
hooked
today.
up.
I'd play it for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Just put me on a drip.
I think somebody might even be like remaking it in a new engine, like just remaking the game. And if they do that, dude, I will 1,000%.
I will buy the shit out of that. But only if it's as good as the old one. I'm not putting up with some fucking. Oh, sorry.
Well, because it was just pure, unadulterated fun, and that it was also like you had so much fun with your friends. It was like a sense of community. It was before we did everything online. Like you actually, people came over your house, and and then you got your Mountain Dew and your Doritos, and everybody was hanging out.
Thinking of that. I was just thinking like cheese Doritos, and then your fingers are orange, and then the N64 controller's going orange, and you must keep playing. It was a great time. So I feel like a lot of people talk about GoldenEye and Pierce Brosnan of our generation. So the last half of Generation Y and the first half of Generation Y and the last half of Generation X, because of the game as well as the fact the movie was great.
Yes.
The soundtrack, if you remember, that was the first very modern soundtrack, because you've always had soundtracks made by famous people, or often, but that soundtrack, I'm not sure if you remember, but it was like a sort of techno-y.
Yes, like techno. It's like
and it was, everybody had it playing in their car, bass pumping, and so you had the game with the song with the movie.
And also, people were hungry for it because there was like a bunch of legal battles that stopped the Dalton era. Actually, Dalton was supposed to do one more, and because of legal stuff, so it took them like almost a decade before they made another one. So James Bond had been absent for, from the late or mid to late 80s to 1995. So
Oh, damn. Yeah.
it was like a big thing, and the fact that the movie is very good. Like it's one of the better James Bond movies. It's the best Brosnan one, hands down. Like
Yes,
without even having to think about it, it is by far the best Brosnan one.
Sorry, I didn't know if I'd interrupted you or.
No, you're good.
What was I going to say? The Skyfall. I thought that was quite interesting because I thought. Sorry, I'm not good with names or anything that involves my memory. But the amazing French actor, is it Javier Bardem?
Oh yeah, he's Spanish.
Is he Spanish?
Yeah, Javier Bardem. Yeah, yeah. He's married to Penelope Cruz now.
Okay, I was about to say I like him. Now I despise him.
Took her off the market, Mark.
Yeah, I know. God damn it! I was so
you had your shot, buddy.
Yeah, I did. First day. Yeah, I really like him. I love him from that film where he kills people with an air gun.
Oh, No Country for Old Men, the Coen Brothers movie.
God, that film. I was not scared of oxygen before that film.
He's a great actor. He's just a solid actor, and I like when they cast people in the James Bond villains. Like everybody there knows what they're kind of doing, and they're having fun, and it comes through. And their performance, like you could just see that, like Javier Bardem having the time of his life, being able to be a monologuing Bond villain. You know?
Yeah, I know. Like because the island, I think a lot of people are very often interested in that island that they're on, where there's the giant statue, and I think it's supposed to be like an old Soviet island. It's actually an island off the coast of Japan. That at the peak, because Japan and the UK are actually very similar. Their histories are very, very similar. Both very small islands. Both became very large colonial powers. Then both dwindled because the Second World War crippled them. You know, we were bombed and firebombed to crap, as well they were nuclear bombed to crap. And that island was, just as they were the height of their industrial power, you would go there in a boat, do your daily work, and then come back. And so that island's a really fascinating place. But I remember, obviously, spoiler alert, but I guess everyone's seen it. So he's kind of like a master hacker, would you say? And he has these rigs.
All of the like service center databases stuff. He's got like little hard drives hooked up all over the place.
Frankly, he looks like he was mining Bitcoin, and I still think that's what he was doing. Yeah,
my wife made that same joke last night. He's like, he's a Bitcoiner, huh?
Yeah, you knew it before me. So I always found that scene very interesting for two reasons. Number one, that was the first time in modern. I remember it with Roger Moore, but that was the first modern Bond where there's a clear homosexual inference.
Yes. Yeah.
That he goes and he starts, like, he opens his shirt button really slowly, and then he slides his hand in, and he's like, "Oh, mommy hurt you." And then he's like, "You're trying to go back to your training, aren't you? What are you thinking, James? How did they teach you to deal with this?" And then he said,
"Well, first time for everything. Yes."
Something like, he looks at him and he goes, "What makes you think this is my first time?"
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Bond.
I thought, "Oh, smooth." And then obviously there's the other part of the scene where they go outside, and Javier Bardem puts a shot of whiskey on the Bond girl's head, and then he gives James the gun. And obviously James had already been he'd failed, hadn't he? He'd failed his MI6 training because the stress was getting to him. He was erratic. He was having nightmares. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't shoot straight. And he actually told him before they went outside, "Do you really think M would never lie to you?" And he goes, "Yeah, she would never lie to me." And he goes, "What did you get on your shooting test?" And he goes, 80%. And then Javier Bardem goes, 40%. And then they walk outside. He puts the shot on her head, gives him the gun. You see the gun violently shaking, and he pulls the trigger. And what you think he's going to do is, magically do the perfect shot and shoot the shot. And then she'll still be alive, but she'll be screaming and blah, blah, blah. What he actually does is just shoot the statue next to her, and then Javier Bardem obviously steps up and, takes her life. And then, James Bond goes,
"What do you say to that?"
It's a waste of good scotch.
And I just love that whole scene, like the looks of the island with the huge statue and.
It's a gorgeously shot movie and directed movie. It's Sam Mendes directed it. Roger Deakins, cinematographer of some note, he was a cinematographer on that, and it is a gorgeous. It might be one of the best looking Bond movies ever.
Yeah,
I mean, even just like the fight that they have in Shanghai that he has in like that high rise or whatever.
Oh, yes.
You have the jellyfish projection behind them, and they're like fighting in shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, some really striking imagery there.
It's an amazing film. A lot of people say that there are patterns with the Bond films, as there are with other films. So it'll be something along the lines of, and I know I've got this wrong, I apologize, but it's something along the lines of good, best, shit, even better, shit, very best, or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, in theory, this next one, the one that we're, the one that we'll talk about, is supposed to be the best. If it sticks to this pattern, which there's no reason it should, but then this one should be the best.
Well, they've had a rough go with the Craig era, because I mean, Casino Royale, which that is my favorite Daniel Craig one, is the Casino. I think it is the quintessential like James Bond movie. Mm-hmm. It's maybe a little long. It's also directed by Martin Campbell, the same guy who directed GoldenEye. But after that, like Quantum of Solace is kind of awful. I think it's one of the worst James Bond movies, period.
Is that the one with the fire thing?
It's the one with the oil in the desert, like at the end.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, and it's part of that has to do with like there was a writer's strike at the time, so nobody could work on the script legally. So there's like they were shooting a movie with no script. So they had all the set pieces planned out, because you do that all before you start production. Well, these big movies, they do all the set pieces before they write the script. Like don't. So they have like, okay, we're gonna go here. We're gonna do this in Spain. We're gonna do this in France. And actually, Mission Impossible, they do the same thing. So they have all the set pieces planned out of what they're gonna do, and then they write a movie to fit them, which is kind of, obviously would seem counterintuitive, but it requires so much pre-production to pull that stuff off. You have to plan it like 2 years ahead of time.
Yeah.
Quantum of Solace just has no script, basically. Like they just had to wing it, and I think the product itself shows. And it also was the one that was the most Jason Bourne, like a lot of shaky cam action stuff.
Yeah.
It felt very much of the era, like very dated in a way.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, actually. It does feel dated, because what year would that have been?
2007, I think, 2008.
And it feels like a Pierce Brosnan movie.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and then Skyfall, obviously they were trying to meet the 50th anniversary of Bond, and that's why that movie feels very classic. Feels like a Connery movie almost, except for the modern need to make everything lore-based. So they have to have all of these personal connections for the characters. Like, it's a little contrived, like the idea that like M being like a mother figure to these two guys that happen, like one of them happens to be James Bond, and then they double down in Spectre, which is the thing I hated so much. Like James Bond's stepbrother is Blofeld. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to do this. Like, you don't need to do this.
I know. It's. Do you know what? I never thought of it like that, but now you say that, I completely agree. I don't see the need to have to try and link, to kind of spider link everything to everyone else.
Well, because it used to be for, God, Queen, and Country. That was like kind of James Bond's motto. And now it's like all personal stakes. Now he has to be personally invested in it more so than like service to his country. So I guess it's maybe a little bit less like nationalistic in a way now than what it was in the past, Yeah,
I guess so.
But the thing I think that hurts like a series like James Bond is because now when they do, whoever takes over for James Bond, they essentially have to like reboot the entire franchise. Like you can't just do another entry into James Bond. You can't just have another adventure, because you've built a character now that is that has a coherent through line throughout his movies. So the Craig era has basically a storyline throughout all of them that all connect. That's not something that they had really done in previous Bond movies. Even the Brosnan ones, Like those are ones that are just like They just feel like kind of episode of the week type style, like villain of the movie.
Definitely less like it than the Daniel Craig era.
Like nobody's directly referencing characters from other movies.
Yeah.
In the next movie, but in the Craig era, that's what it's all about. It's all about actually Spectre became the thing that was like the through line through everything. And I know Spectre existed in the old ones, and there was a little bit of a connection, but they definitely felt isolated.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 70s and late 60s Bonds was that was quite a lot like that. There wasn't there because you would get characters popping up like Blofeld, Goldfinger, and some of their weapons would appear in another film, and some of the bad guys would be in one film, and then.
But the only connection they would have would be like for James Bond, be like, "Oh, I remember you," and that's it. And then they just go on with whatever the story is. It's you don't find out that they're cousins or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, obviously, stuck on the carpet. A very contentious thing is the what happens after the next James Bond, because obviously, if this really is Daniel Craig's swan song, that's kind of sad because he is an amazing. I think he's an amazing Bond.
Yeah, I think he's a great Bond. Yeah.
But obviously, all good things have to come to an end. Now,
it's going to be Henry Cavill, dude.
I know that would be freaking amazing.
I think that they're edging because that's been the rumor for years, is that Henry Cavill actually screen tested for Bond, like because Daniel Craig was thinking about being done after Skyfall, because Skyfall is kind of the logical conclusion to his character, like the character they built.
Yes, it is.
And then Spectre is like, oh, that's a little. Oh, we're just going to keep going. Okay. Because Spectre has amazing set pieces, but it is not a good movie. But it has some incredible moments. Like the opening of Spectre, like the Day of the Dead stuff, is incredible. But
well, that would be amazing. Like if it was Henry Cavill, then I think that would be really good. Because I know there was a thing for a while where people were saying it was going to be a black woman, and people... I can't remember her name now, but I can picture her face. And I wouldn't like that. The reason I wouldn't like that is purely because I like things to say how they are in the books. Like, if you want to do a spy thriller that is with a British woman, then we'll do that.
Do it. Yeah.
But what I don't want is to be like, oh, well, we've had too many white people playing this white man, so now we're just going to have a Pakistani playing this dude.
Yeah, that's
freaking ridiculous.
It's just lazy.
It's lazy. Very lazy,
and it's also almost condescending.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
I was just going to say that. Like how much more condescending? Obviously, many people don't care because they're like, oh, money and fame, so I don't care. But it's very like handing down your used clothes, isn't it? Where you're like, well, we'll just give it to this person. And some people are like, well, it doesn't say in the book. It does say in the book. It describes the dude down to his nose. You know, how tall he is, that he looks quintessentially British. He also looks like this performer that I was telling you about before. You know, he's got a side parting of dark brown hair. He's got brown eyes, blah, blah, blah. And that was actually people. The funny thing is now people say, oh, you only care because you're saying it's black. You're saying they might be black. No. The fuss that people kicked up when Daniel Craig was offered up as James Bond because he had blonde hair.
Blonde hair. That was
people were like
freaking
you can't
out.
Be James Bond, you've got blonde hair. And suddenly now, like when people suggest it could be a black girl, people are like, oh, you're only saying that because you're racist. I'm like, you should go back 12 years and see how many people were about to burn shit down.
Yeah, because people just anything that is a deviation from what like a standard is, everybody freaks out. Well, like it's like the new one that's coming out because it's been. It's been supposedly coming out for 2 years. Yeah. So this thing has been in the can, locked. There was already a preview cycle before COVID happened, and now it just continues on and on. Yeah. So they already, because there was a big controversy because there's his co-star is a black woman, and I don't know if this is a spoiler. I don't think it is. So
no, that's all in the trailer.
Yeah, but she's the new 007. Because 007 is something that's given to you by the government. She's not James Bond, but she's the new 00 because they're implying that James Bond has retired, and that he's coming back.
I'm not sure if this is an unfunny joke, but I'm about to go outside and hang myself.
Well,
I'm serious.
That's the storyline.
But I thought that had all been changed. I'm genuinely about to kill myself. I thought that had all been changed. I thought they were saying that that is what they wanted you to think. But of course they wouldn't have a woman playing 007, because that would be fucking retarded.
Well, she is. I'm pretty sure she has the designation of 007 now, because James Bond, like the way that they did it in the Craig ones, is that he has to. It's like a rank. And he puts the rank on in the beginning of Casino Royale by killing that dude in the beginning of that movie.
Oh, okay. Well,
so he's retired, and they don't retire your number. You basically, it goes to whoever the next like person in line.
Well, why
is.
don't they just make her 006?
Well, because that's Sean Bean.
What about 012?
Well, exactly. You could say that, but they're playing fast and loose. They want to like subvert expectations. It was a way to rile people up a little bit, maybe.
Well, that's what I had heard it was. Like, I was told that this was just in the same way that when Daniel Craig came along and he was blonde, and we might see this. Listen, we might see this whole thing again, where just like before, everyone was like, "You can't have a blonde James Bond. You're supposed to have dark brown hair, man." And then after the first two movies, everyone was like, "Oh, this dude rocks." We might have it now, where people are like, "Oh, you can't have a black female playing a white male." We might in 2 years be like, "Oh, this is really cool." But I had heard that this whole thing was just to give it loads of
like a bait and switch.
Yeah, exactly. Because like with anything to do with James Bond, if there's anything out of the ordinary for James Bond over the next movie, you'll have like a period of about 6 weeks in the British media where it's constantly being talked about, and a lot of people were saying that that they wouldn't, that they had so many people saying, "Oh, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would you completely change a character?" That they weren't going to do it. But I don't know.
Well, because that's the way they're getting around it, is to say that 007 is not James Bond, and they're saying it's a designation you're given to by MI6. So that's how they're getting around. She's not taking over the character, but in MI6, she's now 007, and now they have to work together. Listen, I don't know this for sure.
Yes.
I don't know this 100%, but that is the vibe I got, and I have a feeling that is going to be the case, because they're going to be like, well, she's not James Bond.
I don't even know what to say. So you're telling me James Bond is dead and 007 is a
he's not dead.
Person?
He retired.
Oh, so he can come out of retirement for the next movie.
Didn't you hear? He has no time to die, Mark.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Oh god, they'll have to be careful with the names though, won't they? If we're going to start moving into this like woke generation of James Bond, and they won't be able to, like, is she going to just be flagrantly sleeping with anything?
No, I don't think she takes over the franchise. I don't think that's the intention.
But I get what you're saying, but like, if James Bond, the person named James Bond, is retired, because I thought James Bond was like Bart Simpson, so he is just forever, the rough age of its character.
Yeah.
But if James Bond is retiring and 007 is now, I can't remember her name, forgive me, I'm sorry, but is now this British lady who, like, what? I don't get how they then carry on from that.
But that's what I'm saying. I think they, like, with the way that they have done this with Daniel Craig, is that like they will have to be like literally a hard reboot. Like, you have to start. You have to take his arc, his thread of movies, and they stand alone. I won't have it. God damn it!
I fucking don't. I can't deal with this, James. James.
No, because I think that they're going to have to do a hard reboot. So I have a feeling they're going to cast a younger guy too as well. Even though Henry Cavill's not like young, I guess he would probably be about the same age Daniel Craig was when he took over.
From what I understand, dude, they were pretty much all between like 37 and 41 when they were cast as James Bond. So you want to be in your late.
Well, that's why like everybody was like pulling for Idris Elba, and I'm like, hey, I like Idris Elba just as much as the next person, but that dude's like in his 50s. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, Idris 10 years ago, I wouldn't have minded. I would have still thought a little bit silly because he doesn't match the description of the books, and also the UK is only 3% black, so the chances of having a black Secret Service agent fairly slim. But I love Idris Elba as an actor, and he is And he is a big dude because obviously he did a
Yes.
series. I don't know if you guys saw this in America, but he did
Luther?
a series. Sorry, what?
Luther?
No, it was probably 3 years old, where he was like, I could be a heavyweight boxer, and his friend was like, bollocks. Everyone thinks that until they try it. And so he did this thing where he did like 6 months training, and he actually had a couple of amateur heavyweight boxing matches, and he kicked some ass.
Oh, a superb right hand!
No
So
way.
yeah.
Okay.
So he could have been good as like James Bond's friend that takes over from James because James is dead. But
That
I'm
would have
not-
been acceptable. Yeah.
Yes, but I'm not having someone else play James Bond that completely goes against. But at least that Idris is a British man.
Yeah.
This is much closer than a 22-year-old girl. You know what I mean?
Slightly, just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I could, like, in my mind's eye, I could see Idris Elba as James Bond, a younger Idris Elba. Like, I could see
Yeah.
it. Like,
Definitely, like in his 30s, if he's in his late 30s.
but not now. No. Like,
I mean, how many movies could he do now?
like two,
two? Yeah.
if that.
But, yeah.
I don't know. I just think they're gonna go hard reboot. We're gonna start over. We're gonna do the same thing with Daniel Craig, where it's like, oh, he's a young new James. He's a new 007. Like they're gonna do that again, because that was the whole thing with Craig. Was like, yeah, he's not as refined. He's a little rough around the edges. He just became a 00.
He looks like Shrek.
That's why he's yeah. He not only he looks like Shrek, and he runs through walls like the Kool-Aid man. Remember in Casino Royale where they have like the parkour opening?
Yes,
He
I
like
do.
literally just runs through the wall.
Yeah, that
Oh
was
my
brilliant.
I have such great memories. My brother Ryan, as a kid, was like really into James Bond for some reason. So we actually like used to really bond over that. And
Yeah.
I took him when he was very young to go see Casino Royale in the theater, and we were so fucking stoked. We were just like, "Oh my god, you see, just ran through a fucking wall, dude!" And we're like high fiving in the movie theater. We
That
were
sounds
so pumped.
amazing.
And then
How
we
old
went
was Ryan been then? How old would he have been back then?
like 12, 11 or 12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was like young,
Right.
yeah. It was like what, the early 2004 or 5?
Was
So
it
was
that?
like, maybe he was like 13 or 14, maybe.
Was it that long ago?
I think so, yeah.
Oh my God, what has happened to my life?
I know, you're like, now you're starting to see like, because that's what I meant earlier when I was like, wow, I've lived through 2 James Bond cycles, like cognitively have lived through them.
Yeah.
That's like makes me feel very old.
Yeah.
Or it's like when
Yeah.
somebody with like The Matrix 4 is coming out, and I was like, holy shit! I remember going to see The Matrix in the movie theater. That was
Yeah.
22 years ago.
My God. Can I just quickly say, The Matrix is an incredible, incredible film. If you forget that there's a part 2 and 3 and you just
Yeah.
use it for the part 1, I remember watching that film. I was in school, in high school. I guess I was like 15-ish, something like that. And like I remember all the hype, but you never kind of had. They didn't tease it too much, and then so you didn't really know what you were looking at. Because if you remember, a lot of the adverts was just that dialing tone, which for you kids that are too young, we used to actually have dialing tones for
Yeah.
broadband. Sorry, for dial-up internet, and so it was just that. Brr, brr.
Whoa.
Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself.
But you really had no idea what you're going to see.
No, that you had never seen anything like that before. Like that
Yeah.
was like blew open a door, which informed every movie that came after it for a decade.
Yeah.
Like
But
every
like the-
action movie, like was directly ripping off the Matrix.
Absolutely. But what I mean is, I 100% agree with that. But the actual trailer didn't show you anything.
No, it was very simple. The biggest thing that they showed, they showed like a little bit of bullet time, and then they showed you the helicopter blowing up on the building and like the glass waving out.
Warping.
Yeah, warping out.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was like I was like, because I saw it probably a few weeks after it came out, and I was like begging my dad. I was like, Dad, we have to go see The Matrix.
Yeah.
And my dad being pretty cool overall. Like he took all of us. Like so,
Oh,
I think even my brother Dan went to see The Matrix, and he was like 6 or 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your dad is a legend in that. That was amazing.
Well, it was we had a lot of attachment to movies in our house. Like it was a lot of our family bonding stuff, especially with our father. Surrounds like movies and storytelling, and he was like a frustrated writer. Like he wanted to be a writer growing up, and so he was always like really into that stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was just always very prevalent in our household, and like talking about them and stuff like that.
Well, I'm sorry. I think like we go through phases, and those phases are coming thicker and faster now. But so with my son, when I see him watching YouTube, I'm like, oh, what are you watching that crap for? That that'll rot your brain type thing. But then I think, wait, when I was 12, I would have sat in front of the TV for 2 or 3 hours on a Saturday morning watching stuff specifically designed for me.
Yeah.
And then, your brain kind of takes 10 seconds to realize, oh, this is just exactly the same. And it's the same, TV replaced the radio, to coin a phrase. And the radio replaced, and now I'm not talking entirely for people out there, but the radio kind of replaced the book. So 100 years ago, if you were sitting in a London suburb or a Philadelphia suburb, you would sit around your dad or your mum and they would read you a story. Like even if you're 15 years old, because it was freaking boring. And then came the wireless, and my nan talked about the wireless. Like they would sit around the radio and they would and then onto TV and movies, and now YouTube and Netflix and stuff like that. So with your dad taking you to watch that movie, that was just, I guess, his way of, like you said, having a story to bond around and all watch the same experience.
Exactly. And I have the same thing because I have the same impulses. I think the older you get, the more you have to be like, oh, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
What you guys are into is that's bullshit, and
In
you shouldn't
my
watch
day.
those things. Those will rot your brain, right? Like you said.
Yeah.
I do think it's a little different because of like the hyper consumerist angle, like the hyper editing. I think a lot of stuff on YouTube is like might be like detrimental to like brain development in a way that maybe the things that we grew up with weren't so much. Not to say that not everything has a potential negative effect, but like, people talk about the MTV generation, right? The MTV generation, and they usually are saying that is because of the editing style of music videos changed in the early 2000s. And movies and popular culture and television shows started once music video directors started making movies, they would take that style and bring it to movies. But the thing is, it's like hyperactive. There'd be a cut every 2 seconds. And that was like a studio mandate for a while. Like if you make like a PG-13 action movie meant for like Charlie's Angels or something like that. Remember those with Drew Barrymore and stuff? Well, that's what they would do. They would structure them and make them like music videos, and it affects your cognitive processes. Like, and so I'm always mindful of that stuff because last year when my wife and I had COVID, the tablet ended up really like saving us because you have 2 parents quarantined with a kid.
Oh man!
2 years old, and we're both sick, and we just couldn't do it. Like we just couldn't get up for it, and so we have the tablet, and then that became kind of a habit because we just let him use YouTube, which was a mistake.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, like I don't know how the algorithm works or whatever, but like even like because we would type in like nursery rhymes, whatever. Here you go. You watch these for a little while.
Yeah.
Somehow he ends up on like these very disturbing like meme videos with all of these things I learned about cartoon cats. Siren Head, like all of these, and they're very aggressive, like weird. They're weird, and I'm like, how the fuck did he find this by just clicking on recommended videos?
Yeah.
So I've had to be like a little bit more. I mean, granted, my son's 4; he's not 13 like your son. Your son's obviously a little bit more developed and can make decisions probably a little bit more critically than my son, who's just like, you see this cat, he's talking about suicide. You're like, oh, great. Great,
Yeah.
dude.
I mean, I did hear somebody talking about, I've heard someone talk a couple of times about that algorithm that you're talking of and how their kid ended up on something like with I don't know, Hitler raping a frog.
Yeah.
Whilst dancing around a campfire, and they started off on like a He-Man video or something.
Well, it's because a lot of the content creators, they know how the algorithm works, and there's like a bunch of like they're Korean and Europeans that make what looks like kid material.
Yeah,
that is not, and it's very weird that you would even think to do that. But it's almost like, and I hate not to be too like crazy conspiratorial. It's like a psyop. It's like a foreign government coming in and like producing material, which would not shock me if that were the case, to undermine the development of a generation and make them apathetic, and like, I don't know. It's I haven't really put a ton of thought into it. I was actually going to do like a nightcap. I was going to take a clean YouTube account.
Yeah.
And then just only start on kid stuff and only click on recommended videos to see where it went.
That would be amazing, and especially like if you document it when the FBI come around your house and ask you why you're only looking up kid stuff, you could be like, "This is why."
This is why I'm a detective.
Yeah, exactly. That would be great. But yeah, no, I mean, listen, dude, we've all heard of Yuri Bezmenov.
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage.
And look, I'm not saying whether Yuri was right or wrong. He was clearly right. But yeah, like I would not put it past some other governments that perhaps are in a rising power, that perhaps are looking at the beginning of a scrap with the number one world power.
Yes.
And are looking at a way that they could possibly diminish the next generation's intelligence and or moral worth. And a good way of doing that would be exactly that. And we also have just seen that, I guess as much some of our friends wouldn't admit this, I do believe some countries are freer than others. And America is a particularly free country. It might have its drawbacks, as everything does. But if you're comparing it to China, if you look at China, I don't know if you've heard about this, I'm sure you will have. China's just banned its children from any more than an hour's YouTube or gaming a week. You get one hour.
And they've also banned men that are too feminine from television.
That's right. Yeah, I think they're targeting K-pop.
They probably, yeah, because of all like the gender bending kind of. Everybody's basically took Ziggy Stardust and just ran with it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I got the medicine, so you should keep your eyes on the ball. This is get it, heavy. Can you hear the bass? Boom, I'm ready. Levies, cities, honey. Yeah, this bitch ching like money.
They really did. Yeah. Ziggy played a joke. Yeah. Yeah, they really are. And so, I guess like somewhere good is somewhere in the middle, which if you're in a freer country, you're allowed to pick that middle. So for example, you have said, well, I will be deciding how much of this I want my son to ingest.
Yeah, exactly. It's about personal responsibility, like be an active parent, like be involved in your kid's life, talk to your kids, look at what they're watching, watch stuff with them. Like you need, even though it sucks sometimes, like I don't want to sit there and watch Octonauts, but I do because I'm like hanging out with my son. We're learning about stuff. We're talking. We're engaging, and also I get to see what we're actually watching because sometimes you watch children's entertainment and it is occasionally very subversive. Like, and you're like. Like I can't remember. There's like a film critic. He's like, there's nothing lower than adults that make children's entertainment for adults.
Yeah.
Like people that are like, well, we made this kids movie, but we have to entertain the grown-ups while, Shrek is on his adventure. So we're gonna put like a bunch of sex jokes in here, and you're like, you don't have to do that. Like, let kids be kids. Let them be innocent for as long as they can. Trust me, it's gonna happen. They're going to have to live life like the rest of us. Like, give them this brief little window of time in their life where they don't know anything. Like,
I fully concur.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, anyway, so are you going to go see No Time to Die? Can you go see it?
I can. Yeah, I think a lot of countries are kind of fibbing about how strict things are in other countries, because I have friends in Australia that are like, dude, it's really not as bad as people are making out. And I'm like, oh, okay, fair enough. I mean, I've seen all the stuff that says they're building concentration camps and stuff. Maybe they are. I don't know. But he says it's not that bad. I can't remember the last time people weren't allowed to go to work or school here. It was probably a year and a half ago, a year and a quarter ago.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, no, it seems like a lot of that stuff is, yeah, like you said, it's like the media.
Overblowing it.
Well, because it gets people to watch it. It's provocative.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah.
I mean, the stuff in Australia, like I hope that their day to day isn't as bad as it's implied, but it does seem like they're building a weird infrastructure that could potentially in the future be used for something that's like, you're like, oh, why are you guys like the concentration camps, right?
Yeah.
Like they are really putting people in those things. Like actually some guy who had like a TikTok or something. Some lady was out in like, because they're little trailers basically, and some lady was like having tea, and the cop like immediately came and stopped and told her to put her mask on.
Yeah, dude. I mean, don't get me wrong. I full well know and have seen some seriously messed up crap in Australia.
Yeah.
But let's not forget as well, Australia is a state. Is a collection of states just like America.
Yeah.
So you have some states that are much freer, and then you have some crazy states where they locked. I can't remember. Is it New South Wales maybe where they locked down because they had one case?
Well, exactly. Well, and especially
and I was like, what?
New Zealand is the same way. I mean, they're
New Zealand's
like,
completely insane. Lovely people, insane government.
I love the Kiwis. I do. I really
love
do.
the Kiwis. Yeah. Never met one I didn't like. But Jacinda Ardern is insane.
Yeah. She's not letting anybody go see James Bond.
No.
What the fuck?
I know. And she wants to be James Bond now. But yeah, no, I will definitely be going to watch it. Excuse me. And I just hope... listen, man. I am a sensitive, feminine creature, as you can tell. If they mess around with my feelings... I will be angry, because I don't take death very well, and I don't take change very well. And I know apparently that's a sign of a weak man, as if you can't take change very well, so I'm obviously a weak man. I'm going to find it difficult to not have the James Bond as 007, but who knows? Maybe it'll be, Henry Cavill or a younger version of Idris, and it will still be roughly as it should be.
Yeah.
And then the next one will be a Chinese disabled Muslim.
Yeah, well, that's definitely. Well, you know what? I don't think they're going to hit the gas. I think you're likely to see a gay James Bond.
Oh my lord!
It's going to be
so many innuendos.
What's his name? Because I think this was floated years ago. Rupert Everett. You know who Rupert Everett is?
Oh god! You could not have Rupert Everett as James Bond.
In the early 2000s, they were floating the idea of doing a gay James Bond.
Oh my god!
And they had floated Rupert Everett has done a screen test for James Bond. I know that for sure. He's talked about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess back then in the Pierce Brosnan era, they were like, "Do you have a middle class English accent? Are you like 5'10", or I guess around 5'10", and do you have dark brown hair? And if you do, and you're fairly famous, come talk to us." And obviously that's changed now.
Yeah. You know, it's actually just to put a button on the conversation a little bit, like just to briefly go back to the physicality of the James Bonds up until Daniel Craig. Yes. You know why they looked like that?
Why?
Because we would identify with them. Like you said, like Sean Connery, like being kind of looking like a normal dude. Pierce Brosnan kind of looking like a normal dude. It makes it easier for guys like us to be like, oh yeah, I can see myself as James Bond.
Yeah.
And now he's the Terminator. So now I don't see myself as James Bond.
Well, the Shrekinator. Yeah, he's an absolute beast. But well, I really hope we should come back obviously and talk when we've seen it.
Yeah, I'd definitely be down for that. Yeah.
It would be amazing to see how different or accurate it is, because we might look back and be like, Mark, I can't believe you were thinking that. You're such a fanny. But yeah, we'll see. Or you could be exactly right, and I'll be like, I'm never watching this again.
No, it'll be cool. I definitely would love to reconvene once we've seen the movie and talk about it. That would be a lot of fun. But yes, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate you coming on, dude.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure. And may I say thank you to your good audience. And I have an amazing movie to recommend to you all. It is a mid-80s blockbuster. One of the two young stars sadly passed away, actually, in his early 20s of cancer, which is brutal. It's called The Dirt Bike Kid.
Everybody's after him, but nobody's catching him. The Dirt Bike Kid.
Catch that kid! Arrest that punk!
Nail this kid!
How does he do that?
Woo!
Oh, that bike. Special.
Special?
Well, provided it has the right rider.
What's going on? Come on, stop!
Who's here to buy? I have a 73, 18, 14, 11. I'm going to form a 9, 11, 73. See if I can't do a 61492 I'm over.
The Dirt Bike Kid to the rescue.
What's going on, Mike?
Bank foreclosed.
Keep him away from the construction site.
What have you been up to? Oh, I was just busy. Busy? Yeah. It wasn't any big deal.
I'm gonna get you, kid! And when the going gets tough, the tough go flying.
Wow.
Cause everybody's after the Dirt Bike Kid.
Want that bike found now!
By hook, or by crook, or by lemon meringue.
You respect your elders!
All fun breaks loose when he turns the town upside down.
That sucks!
But when the banker pays his bill,
Never!
heads or tails, you'll flip. For Peter Billingsley as the Dirt Bike Kid.
You are something special.
He's flying your way, the Dirt Bike Kid. Catch him if you can.
There is no better movie than that in the world. Enjoy.
Okay.
Thank you for putting up with me. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you for being here, man. And his link's in the description for where you guys can find Mark. He's got a great channel called Generation Y if you want to look it up instead of clicking the link. And he does a lot of great stuff, a lot of political commentary, social commentary. He does a podcast with my brother Dan, where they get into have a nice few rows and disagreements. It's good to hear different perspectives on things, and that stuff's going well, and the channel's going very well. So that's awesome. And we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.